that we're making progress in the shapes of the eye. And one important thing to know, again, by starting small and by taking a look at the look from a distance, you can see that the right eye and the left eye aren't of equal heights because my eyebrows are actually not of equal heights on my face. So what I've done now is had an opportunity to take a step back, and now I can adjust the right eye so that its shape more closely mirrors that of the left. One thing that I also want to show you is how to get a clean edge on a shape like this. So I'm going to use my brush, and you can see that it's a very flat brush, very thin, but wide. And so I'm just going to go up to the edge of where I want the shape to be and just drag the brush along to get that sharpness on the outer edge of the shape. And that's how you get that really crisp, clean edge using a bigger brush, and it's much more time efficient. Alright, you can see the completed eye now with the Stila Smudge Pot painted on the lid. You'll also see it is in the inner rim of the eye, both lower and underneath the top lashes. The reason I line the underneath of the top, first of all, I want no flesh tone peeking through anywhere. So the Stila Smudge Pot is literally wedged in between my eyelashes, covering every bit of exposed flesh so that there's no flesh tone peeking through at all. Secondly, if you line the inner rim of the upper eye as well as the lower, your lower liner will stay better, because what happens is that upper line, that upper inner rim, as it meets with the lower, will steal product from the underside of the eye. And so whenever you're lining the inner rim of the eye, I suggest lining the top as well, because that's twice as much product on the inner rim that's going to stay. Okay, so I've begun the shape on the nose, and because I'm painting over turquoise, exactly what's happening that I said would happen earlier is the color is becoming a little diluted. So I'm going to have to work a little harder to make sure that it stays deep and black, and I may even want to set it with a black eyeshadow. Also important to know when you're painting the nose a color, and as gross as it sounds, you have to paint inside the nose. So I'm actually using my brush to paint just under the edge, not all the way up in the nose, but just enough, especially here underneath, so that no flesh is peeking through. You'll get a more consistent look, and the look will just look more polished. Okay, so the black eyes and nose are complete. Now it's time to go in and do the actual relief white teeth that will go around the mouth. And so what I'm going to do is use the white chroma cake with a pointed flat brush. It's a MAC concealer brush, number 194. And the first thing you want to make sure of is that your brush is really spanking clean to get the crispest white that you can get. If there's any residue of color in your brush, you're going to see it as soon as you mix it with that white color. So we want to mix it with some water. Also, what's important to know about that is as you touch the brush to your face, it is going to pick up bits of turquoise color and transfer it back into the makeup. It's just going to happen. And so you're going to want to consistently be cleaning your brush to keep your white as crisp and bright as possible. You also want to avoid going over it too much, because again, the white will pick up the color of the turquoise from underneath the more you play around with it. So you really want to be sure and sort of have some fleet of hand, as it were, when you're painting the teeth on. And so I'm going to start in the middle. With the two largest teeth, and again just begin edging them out using that brush, and they're going to have a flat bottom and a rounded top. So there's the first. The ones that adjoin next to it, I will actually paint in, but I won't paint them in so that they touch, so that there's a little bit of turquoise between each tooth that helps give them definition. If I had a lot of time, I would actually probably even go back in with a really well-defined pointed shadow brush and even use that turquoise shadow to define the tooth even more. Alright, so I'm done with the teeth, and as I've looked at them, I realized that I really do want to go back in with that shadow and define them a little bit further. It's not in my time plan, and I'm a firm believer that if you have the choice between looking sort of okay and being perfectly on time, or looking fantastic and being a little bit late, I'll generally choose the latter, unless I don't have that choice at all. So I'm going to take a few moments with the deeper turquoise shadow and my flat Laura Mercier liner brush, and I'm just going to go in between the teeth at the sort of at the top, at the root area, and define them a little bit more to give them a little bit more pop. Then we'll go into the liquid liner designs. I'm about halfway through adding the definition to the teeth. I've done it here on the right side of my face, and you can see the difference between the two, how remarkably different and how much this actually stands out and really improves the look. So it hasn't taken that much time, and I think those little impromptu additions can really bring a makeup look to life. So again, be flexible, and if it's outside of your plan, sometimes it's best to just go right ahead and try it. So I'm going to begin the liner decorations, and I actually have two liquid liners that I like to use. Sounds high maintenance, but I do have two different formulas that I really like. The first is by Bourjois, which is, I'm not sure if it's even available in the United States anymore, but it is their black liquid liner. And what I like about it is it has a little bit of a thicker, longer brush, so that I can cover large areas quickly and do designs rather quickly, especially with really bold statements like what I'm going to be doing today. And then the second that I like is actually by Dior. It's their liquid liner, and it has an extremely tiny, extremely thin brush. Both formulas wear really well. I just like them essentially for their difference in brushes. It's important to use the right tools when doing a liquid liner look, and it's always best to err on the side with something smaller. Another important tip is to use just the tip of the brush. If you use the flat of the brushes, if you begin to lay it down on the skin, this is when you start to get a thicker line and you start to lose your precision. So if you're using just the tip of the brush, you get a much finer, more detailed application. So I'm going to begin with the scrollwork kind of rose vine design going up the side of this cheekbone, and then I'll balance it out on the other side. As you can see, I have the beginning, the marigold on this side of the cheek, and now I'm going to be building in the vines. And again, I've got my Bourjois liner brush, which is a little thicker and a little longer, so it's going to build the shape a lot faster. My biggest tip to people with doing this kind of work is to move quickly. A lot of times people want to get very detailed and try and make the line as perfect as possible the first time, and generally what starts to happen is your hand starts to shake. And you also have a tendency to hold your breath while you're doing this, so a lot of people can get a little lightheaded. So my tip is to really get your brush saturated with enough product, but not too much, because again, that's how you get thicker lines, is when there's a lot of product initially, it's going to spread out. Also, where you lay your brush down first is where you're going to get the most product. So if you want the line to be thicker in certain areas, that's where you should begin, and build in both directions to thin it out. So I'm going to begin with my line here, and I'm just going to lay my brush down, and I'm going to do it relatively quickly, so I won't actually talk while I do it. And so there you can see the line isn't exactly perfect. I can go back and perfect it, but the general sweep and flow of the line is what I'm really concerned with. So again, I'll go back and sort of redefine certain areas of it, and then build on the design. And the moment your brush starts to run out of pigment and run out of product is when you should just stop and redip. So there we go. We have the beginning of the vine swirls. Alright, so here's the finished scroll work. The last bit is for me to add color, and then of course no look would be complete without a little bit at least of some Swarovski flatback crystals, particularly for this kind of look because these masks are quite typically made of ceramic, hand painted, and so they'll have a hand painted kind of charm and quality, and a lot of times they will actually be bejeweled, so I will add some turquoise and red crystals in.